Hi, I'm Kenneth Wajda. I'm a professional photographer here in Colorado. Welcome to another one of my photography talks. So today I want to talk about a new technique. So I've often been a photojournalist in most of my career, and I was never one to really bring a flash to a photograph. In fact, I've brought larger lights. I brought hot lights, like 1,000-watt movie lights. Before all the LED lights were out, we used to use tungsten lights. And I brought 1,000-watt lights and 500-watt lights, and I've lit things. And I have used studio flashes with big soft boxes and lots of power. And you can set a few of those around, and you can really tailor your light exactly how you want it. But except for those big units, I really haven't been anything but a natural light photographer. And it's not because I don't like flash. I just don't like flash on the camera. So in the last month, I realized I have some flashes around here. Some are older flashes from like the 70s and 80s, some old sun packs. And I was reading a blog called the Strobes, which you may be familiar with. And he talks about using small lights to control and build scenes. And I'm like, oh, I have small lights. I even have some of those little umbrella mounts with a cold shoe on it. I can even set them up on stands if I wanted to. Well, I just put some of these together. We'll see what they do. And the beauty is you have to use strobes that have power settings, like a 16th power, 8th, quarter, half, or full power. And then you can dial them in, and they're not going to be reading anything to make their own guesstimates of what the light should be. They're going to do what you tell them to. And so I have a couple of those on a stand, and I had a couple of umbrellas, so I popped those onto those stands too. And then I found out that there are these things called remote control radio slaves. And there's a brand called Photix, P-H-O-T-T-I-X, which I found some online for very cheap, and a guy locally selling some locally through Craigslist very cheaply. And so now with a little doodad on top of my camera, I can trigger those two flashes with no wires. And they're very quick to set up. So it's one of those things where it's like, I love the idea of being able to bring light to a shoot instead of just shooting natural light and having control. But I don't always want to bring those giant soft boxes and find power cords and run wires. And these don't need any of those. And the setup for these are probably within 5 minutes I could set up 2 of these lights versus with the big studio flashes, I probably take 30 minutes to set up 3 lights. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I like the idea of the flexibility of what it allows me. And so I started experimenting with it. I photographed some self-portraits of myself with my typewriter. I photographed some objects in my house, and I really have found it to be an incredible experience and fun to create something new. Having these portable lights, they are nimble enough to like kind of go anywhere you want to go with them because they're so small. And they're battery powered. They're so quick. And they're still off the camera. The whole thing of, I don't like on-camera flash. Now, maybe if you're going for that look, if you want it to be that glaring snapshot, okay, then maybe there's a time for that. But I like the off-camera look. And I even have one set up where I have a small little softbox, and I can put the flash into it on a little handle, and I can either run a wire to it or I can set up the wireless, and I can just hold it off frame, and I can literally light somebody with a handheld small softbox. And it's such a way different look than photographing somebody with just natural light or a direct flash. And so I'll put some examples of some of the photos I've made in the show notes so you can see. And there's a different crispness to it. Flashlight tends to be really intense and crisp. It's a different feeling than shooting wide open. For one thing, you're often shooting at f8 or f11 because there's so much more power in a flash than there is in shooting in natural light. And I haven't shot any film yet with it, but I intend to. In fact, I want to set up to make it available so that I can go from a PC terminal right to the flash, and then I can put that into like an old speed graphic or an old Hasselblad and shoot it with film just as well as I can with digital. But the beauty of it is that I have now got this little kit of light that I can go anywhere with. And if it's in a case that's only this big, it's a couple of tiny little stands, a couple of tiny little flashes, and those little remote controls. And simplicity is a inspiring thing sometimes, because you can say, well, if I'm in a pinch, like if I'm going to a corporate job and I'm setting up the big studio, and then they say, well, so-and-so can't get back to the studio, can you shoot them out here? Well, yeah, I'll just go set one of those up. It's a quick way to have a quality of light kind of at your fingertips without needing to do the setup in the studio. And I like it. So I'll put some examples below. Those are, you'll see they're different than what I've been doing most of my talks and all the street work and all the documentary work. And I find them fascinating, and I think you may too. To use flash for an off-camera setup, I think that there's some strength in that, and you may already have the tools to do it, like I did. And if not, I actually went to a thrift store. No, it was an antique store, kind of like an antique flea market. And there's different vendors selling stuff in there. And there was this one pair of Olympus flashes, which are all electronic with like digital readouts, and they had the power settings. I'm like, oh, okay, they have power settings. They work. And they were on the shelf, and they were like marked $35 or $40 each. There's two of them identical, really big and really powerful looking. And I said, hey, these have been sitting here, it says on the tag, since like 2016. How about I give you 20 for the pair? And they said, okay. And that's the way to get a deal. And I just want them for, you know, I'm going to manually control them. I don't need them to be the fanciest units. I just need them to be controllable with power wattage output that I can control. And they both did. So that's a backup set of flashes that I picked up. But those are the kind of things, they're out there. People don't often price flashes very high. In fact, I was at a flea market in New Jersey one time, a couple trips ago, and there was a flash, a little Panasonic flash for like $1. And it was a really little thing. It didn't feel like it would do much. But the one fascinating thing is the on and off switch said off, on, or slave. And I thought, slave. You know, that would be handy, is if I were just shooting somebody with a flash just off camera, I could set this one over there behind them and get a little flash kicker light without having to set up anything. I could just set it on the counter. As long as it's facing them, it'll hit them. And it's got a slave in it, so that means that this flash will fire and trigger that one, and they'll all fire at the same time. So those little flashes, keep an eye out for them. Sometimes those can be little gems and really useful. All right, that's today's photography talk. A little stray from my usual. And I hope you have a great week photographing, and I will bring you more photography talks, and here's the great light, even if it's strobing. All right, talk to you soon.